Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 516, and today's date is November 12th, 2014, and the title of this episode is Kiev preparing for an all-out offensive, which will lead to war. And we can see right now Ukraine is maneuvering its military assets. Of course, they're using the propaganda that Russia now is invading. We can see they're using the propaganda that the southeastern section, the rebels, they are maneuvering their military assets because they are preparing to attack. Now, of course, I said this many times, what they're going to do is they're going to create the illusion that Russia and the southeastern section fired upon Kiev. I don't know how they're going to do this, but they will make it look like they did this. And of course, this is a false flag event. This will try to convince everyone that Kiev was going along with the peace deal, and the southeastern section, with Russia's help, decided to attack, and they had to defend themselves. And we will see the war back on. And you have to remember, the central bankers paid for the entire country of Ukraine. They did not get this. They got the measly western section. They want the southeastern section, and eventually what they're going to do is they're going to maneuver into Crimea. They're going to stage a huge offensive to take the entire country back. And of course, you're going to see more and more propaganda come out as time goes on. Let's get into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand that Europe is completely falling apart. We understand that a lot of the countries are in a depression. Some of the countries are in a deep recession, and this is spreading throughout the Eurozone. And it seems like the British voters' appetite for austerity is rapidly dwindling. The Financial Times poll has revealed, and we see that as more cuts come down and people have to sacrifice more and people are told to do without, this might cause and might spark widespread dissent. Now, we have to look back and wonder, why did London purchase 3 water cannons? Why are they preparing and training their police? Now, we see a lot of countries doing this. We see a lot of countries preparing for dissent. We see a lot of countries getting ready for the people to riot and lash out. We see this happening in Poland today. We see it happening in Mexico. We see it happening in Belgium. And this is really starting to spread, because once the people are pushed to a point and their backs are against the wall, there is no other place for them to go but forward. And this is what the authorities of the government are afraid of, that the people are going to react and say, you know what, enough is enough. We've had enough and we need you to step down. But of course, as we know, the governments will not step down that easily. They like to use force. This is their answer to say, you know what, we control you, you will obey us, and you will do what we say. And of course, we've seen this throughout history, and eventually what happens is there are a lot more people than there are government officials or even police, and guess what? The people overrun those officials and remove them. Now, here in the United States, what are we seeing? We are seeing more layoffs. CSX Corp, they're laying off about 300 people. GM, 2 Michigan plants, laying off about 510 people. And we're seeing that Federal Mogul Corp says they're going to be closing their plants in Oklahoma City. They're going to be laying off about 165 people. Macy's is out there saying, listen, sales aren't as good as we thought, and it looks like Macy's has cut its earning and sales outlook after a disappointing third quarter. Revenue declined by 1.3% to $6.2 billion, and same-store sales fell about 0.7%, including department license to third parties. And we're seeing this happen with many of these retail outlets. And they're reporting that, you know what, sales aren't going as we thought. And as we move into the holiday season, again, this is the big bump that they need to survive the rest of the year. And I don't believe they're going to get this. We're going to see a lot more stores close. We're going to see a lot more people laid off after February, March. And of course, they might blame this whole entire thing on the weather. Who knows? Now, we understand that real estate is declining. We realize that A lot of Americans are completely tapped out. They don't have the credit, they don't have the down payments, and they just don't have the ability to purchase those homes. And this is why we've been seeing a lot of these mortgage departments, a lot of these mortgage companies laying off thousands upon thousands of people. This just didn't start right now. This went back all the way back to August of 2013 when the major banks were laying off those mortgage departments and laying off tens of thousands of people because they realized and they understood that real estate is dead. The only thing they had going at that point were those people paying in cash, and those people were getting the free money from the Fed. They were foreign investors purchasing homes, purchasing any type of building that they could rent out, and now we're at the top. They want to get out and they're trying to sell, but guess what? There are no people right now. And the Mortgage Bankers Association said its seasonally adjusted index of mortgage applications activity, which includes both refinancing and home purchase demand, declined again 0.9% the week ending November 7th. Refinancing applications fell 1.9%. So we can see right now all we are seeing is a decline of those people trying to purchase those homes. Now, no one's taken out mortgage applications at this point, so what is the federal government going to do? And the Fed, well, they're going to introduce pretty much low down payments and will pretty much give a mortgage to anyone that is breathing. Basically the same thing they did with the auto industry, and this is going to start basically in 2015. They're going to try to push people into homes, but I'm going to say this might have a small bump in the real estate market, but then it's going to quickly drop off because the people truly do not have the funds, they don't have the means, and they are just trying to survive right now. And the last thing on their minds is to bring on more debt. But of course, the central bankers kind of don't even realize this. They're going to do everything they possibly can to force people into doing things and taking out more debt. Now, here are some reasons why millennials are screaming mad about our unfair economy. This is coming out of the Economic Collapse blog. The current savings rate for millennials is negative 2%. A survey conducted earlier this year found that 47% of all millennials are using at least half of their paychecks to pay off debt. Now, we understand that most of these youths who are coming out of college have a lot of student debt. They can't find those high-paying jobs or any jobs in that matter, and all they're doing is working those part-time jobs and paying off their debt. One recent survey discovered that an astounding 31.1% of all U.S. adults in the 18 to 34-year-old age bracket are currently living with their parents. Since Barack Obama has been in the White House, close to 40% of all 27-year-olds have spent at least some time as being unemployed. Back in the year 2000, 80% of all men in their late 20s had a full-time job. Today, only about 65% have a full-time job. Half of all college graduates in America are still financially dependent on their parents when they are 2 years out of college, and this is not going to get better. They're having a tough time finding work. In 2008, approximately 29 million Americans are paying off student loan debt. Today, that number has ballooned to 40 million. According to CNN, 260,000 Americans with college or professional degree made at or below the federal minimum wage last year. Our national debt is currently sitting at a grand total of $17.9 trillion. It is on pace to roughly double during the Obama years, and millennials are expected to service that debt for the rest of their lives. And we understand this, that as time goes on, it's going to get worse and worse for the youth of America, just like we've been seeing in Europe. The youth of the European countries, it is absolutely awful. The unemployment rate is skyrocketing. It's anywhere between 35 and 60%. This is the next generation. If we do not have the next generation, the economy is going to fail, and this is exactly what we're seeing right now. Now, during this entire time, the Western countries pretty much have been selling their gold. They're not really acquiring more gold. And if you look all over the place, you can't find anything that says the United States has been acquiring gold. Yes, they're stealing it from other countries, but they're not acquiring it because they need to steal it to give it back to other countries. But during this time, what do we see? We see Russia and China and many of the BRIC nations buying more and more gold. As the gold prices continually drop, they're acquiring more and more of this. Some economists and investors consider gold laughable and backward. The economist John Maynard Keynes famously called it a barbarous relic. The investor Warren Buffett says gold is pretty much something you dig out of the ground, melt it down, and then you put it back in a hole in the ground and guard it day and night. But China and Russia are old-fashioned, and they believe it's tangible, they believe it's real money, and this is why they're acquiring it. And of course, if we look throughout history, it is real money. This has been sustained throughout history, and this is a protection against your wealth if the currency should collapse, which we are seeing right now. Now, in my reports, I talk about Common Core, and it's completely not for the people. Basically what it's doing, it's dumbing down the next generation and brainwashing our children to think the way the government thinks, and that's all it's for. It's for nothing else whatsoever. If you notice, every time the government steps in and says they're going to help with the education process, the United States continually falls in the rankings across the world. It never gets better. If the government could remove themselves and let the states and the people of the community make their own decisions the way the founding fathers really wanted it and allow the education system to work, we would move back up in the rankings. But as the government continually puts their hands into this and tries to manipulate all the education around the country and take control of it, we see our rankings are continually falling. And this is being done on purpose because they want to dumb down the next generation. They want to brainwash all our children to think the way the government is thinking. And a lot of states are fighting back, saying, you know what, we're not going along with this anymore. There are two more states that are saying this, Wisconsin and Ohio. They are spearheading efforts to reclaim more control of their education system. And we can see that many more states are going to start to realize as time goes on, you know something, this is really not good for our kids, and we need to pretty much maybe get rid of this entire system. Now, I've talked about Obamacare in my other reports, and pretty much those people who've been listening to me understand that I am not for Obamacare. It is not for the people. There are no benefits for the people. There are taxes intertwined in this, and this was completely created to not give benefits to the people, but to help the insurance company, help the drug companies, help the government bring in revenue, help the large hospital chains. And we see Gruber, who is out there telling everyone that, you know, the American people are stupid. But there were another video that was produced, and we see that basically he said the lack of transparency in designing Obamacare is a huge political advantage. We had to lie to do it, he said. Truth and full disclosure would have exposed the scam. Enactment couldn't happen politically. This bill was written in a tortured way to make sure the Congressional Budget Office did not score the mandate as taxes. If so, the bill dies. So it's written to be willfully deceptive, confusing, opaque, hiding its real purpose from the public view, suppressing information about younger, healthier consumers forced to pay more for their coverage through higher premiums, deductibles, and copays to cover costs for the older, more vulnerable to illness Americans. A ripoff by any standard. If you like your health care, you can keep it, period. Of course, this is what Obama said, and guess what? Millions of Americans lost their health care. If you like your doctor, you'll be able to keep your doctor, period. Obama said this. Doing so requires millions of Americans to pay extra, and they really didn't get to keep their doctors. Will lower premiums by up to $2,500 for a typical family per year. Guess what? They're significantly higher for most households, increasingly unaffordable. No family making less than $250,000 a year will see any form of tax increase. Obamacare mandates 18 tax hikes, fees, and penalties. Middle-income households are heavily impacted. Obama said he wouldn't sign any plan adding one dime to our deficits either now or in the future. The Government Accountability Office estimates Obamacare costs will increase the primary deficit annually by 0.7% of gross domestic spending. And of course, pretty much everything he said about Obamacare is completely fake, phony, and false. And you can see most of the people are looking at this saying, we are not going to sign up. The premiums are getting too high. We're not getting the benefits. And a lot of people are abandoning Obamacare. And again, they need about 13 million people on Obamacare to break even, and this is why they put the bailout clause inside of Obamacare to bail out the insurance companies. And right now, it doesn't look like they're going to hit that mark. It looks like they're going to be about 4 million people short, and I wouldn't be surprised if that number is even lower. Now, we understand Obama was out there, and he was pretty much talking about net neutrality. Now, if you really look at what he is saying, and of course it sounds good on the surface that, yes, he believes in net neutrality, everyone should have the same speeds and everything, and everyone's agreeing, yes, he's for the people. No, he's not. You have to listen to what he's saying. Obama wants to fully regulate the Internet. He wants to create the effective Department of the Internet under the FCC. Obama called on the Federal Communication Commissions that regulates TV and radio to reclassify the Internet as a public utility. Obama now is using his executive powers to seize control of the Internet. This is not a democratic action voted on by the people or even their representatives. No bill was drafted and introduced in the House or Senate. This is Obama using his dictatorial powers. There have been no gatekeepers deciding which sites you can get access to. There are no toll roads on the information superhighway. This is a set of principles. The idea of net neutrality has unleashed the power of the Internet and given innovators the chance to thrive. This will be very dangerous step towards both taxation and censorship. The FCC function is to regulate radio and TV. They have to apply to the FCC for licenses. What do you think is going to happen with the Internet? Obama already passed a law that if your site violates the copyright of someone else, it can be seized by the feds and shut down. The FCC will be the enforcer in that role as well, but laws are enforced only on a discretionary basis. Let someone violate your civil rights, and it is entirely the Department of Justice that decides if they want to prosecute. The only way for the FCC can ensure traffic is neutral is to officially monitor the flow of traffic. That means they will have to be monitoring stations everywhere. The government will have about 100% access to absolutely everything from your emails and photos to your credit cards and bank accounts. However, sites outside the U.S. will be beyond the jurisdiction of the FCC, so how will they monitor such foreign sites to ensure net neutrality? Well, they'll just block the sites from access. Forget free speech. Obama naturally claims he wants to protect net neutrality. That is the code word for regulating free speech, just like we have free speech in the media. So you can see what they're trying to do. They want regulations, they want licenses, and they will decide if your site meets their criteria. And if it doesn't, they will eventually shut it down. And if you don't have a license, you cannot operate a site. So basically what he's saying, he wants the government to regulate the entire Internet. He wants to control it, and he wants to limit the amount of people that are speaking freely, like the independent media, who is out there reporting on everything the government is doing. You have to go back to when John Kerry said, God, this Internet makes it very hard to govern. No, the Internet makes it hard for you to lie. There's a difference. Govern using the truth is very easy. You don't have to worry about anything because you're always doing it in the best interest of the people and you're telling the truth. Govern with lies, yes, you have to shut up all those people that are trying to expose you. So we can see right now, this is exactly what they're trying to do. Now, out in Ferguson, we understand the people are getting ready. They're purchasing weapons. We understand there are letters going around to all the businesses and all the people there saying, get prepared for what is coming. The U.S. military is also preparing to deploy to Ferguson. Looks like the National Guard, the U.S. military, they're on standby in this area because sometime in November, mid-November, this is when we're going to get the ruling that's going to come down, and we're going to have to watch this very closely as time goes on and make sure and understand what is going on, because we have to remember those agent provocateurs that are going to come out and try to really gin this thing up. We're going to see them, and they're going to be reported on, and people are going to rush down to Ferguson just like they did the last time, and they'll show them doing things and then running away. And if this starts to spread all across the country, we know this was completely planned by the Obama administration and those central bankers who want to declare martial law in this country. Now, it looks like, and we understand, that Ebola is a huge, huge problem in West Africa, and we understand the United States is bringing in troops, and they said they were going to bring in about 3,000, then they upped it to 4,000. Well, it looks like they're saying we only need 3,000 at this time. There's about 2,200 troops in Liberia at this time. They're going to top it off at 3,000, and they're saying that at this time we can keep it at 3,000, but if we need to go higher, we can. But at this time, it looks like the operation can succeed with 3,000 soldiers. Basically, once the time comes, we will overthrow the governments, or we'll force the government to do what we want them to do, and that is to pretty much put all the natural resources on the US dollar and do not do business with Russia or China. Now, Nigeria is still out there, and they are pissed off at the United States. Of course, they have Boko Haram still in Nigeria, and this was all ginned up by the central bankers to get in there, and this is what they wanted to do. And of course, Nigeria is saying, no, we don't want the troops, but we could use some weapons. And of course, the United States is not given any weapons to Nigeria to help fight the terrorists because they want soldiers inside Nigeria. They thought they were going to be allowed inside Nigeria, and this is why they stationed military soldiers in Chad, which borders Nigeria. But of course, Nigeria said, no, we're fine over here. Just give us the weapons. And of course, the U.S. is not giving weapons. Now, Brazil is out there, and they have announced that they will be building a 3,500-mile fiber optic cable to Portugal in order to avoid the grip of the NSA. They announced that not a penny of the $185 million expected to be spent on the project will go to American firms, simply because they do not want to take any chances that the U.S. government will tap the system. Brazil's rejection of American IT products alone, it is estimated that the American firms will lose about $35 billion in revenue over the next 2 years because of this. And of course, we see a lot of countries out there saying, listen, we do not want to have any type of American technology. We're going to create our own operating system. We're going to set up our own internet. We're going to bypass what is out there right now because we understand the NSA has backdoors into pretty much everything. Now, in Ukraine, the European Commission has dispersed on Wednesday a loan of about 260 million euros, which is about $324 million to Ukraine as part of the EU macro financial aid program. This loan adds about 600 million euros dispersed since May. They are putting Ukraine further and further into debt, and we see right now Ukraine is completely collapsing. It's falling apart. Their currency is collapsing, and they realize this. They understand they're being put into debt. They're on the hook to the central bankers, and they need to do what the central bankers want, and that is to get the southeastern section back into Ukraine and then eventually go after Crimea. We understand that Russia now owns Crimea, but that doesn't matter. If this kicks off World War III, so be it. The central bankers don't care. Ukraine said Wednesday it was readying for fresh combat operations. Kiev was preparing for a new round of fighting after seeing increased activity by Russia and pro-Moscow rebels across the region. Now, of course, this is their propaganda that they're using. We have seen columns of Russian equipment, primarily Russian tanks, Russian artillery, Russian air defense systems, and Russian vehicles. We're just seeing them all over the place. And of course, Russia is out there and saying, we basically stopped paying attention to the groundless accusations made by NATO's Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, General Philip Breedlove. He gave a reminder of earlier and similar NATO claims, which have not been backed up by any evidence. We have repeatedly stressed that there was and is no evidence supporting Brussels' regular trumpeting over the alleged presence of Russian forces in Ukraine. NATO is out there saying, yes, Russian troops are in Ukraine, but we just don't have any pictures or proof right now to show you. But we know for a fact that they are in there. They have no satellite images, and we understand the satellite images. They are clear, crisp, in color, 3D, and they can zoom in right where the Russian troops and the tanks are. It's amazing how they have all this lip service, but they have no evidence to back it up. And again, They're just out there saying, please, please, please believe us this time. We're telling the truth. But we know they're not. Because if this was true, they would have the satellites positioned overhead so quickly, they'd have pictures flooding social media sites, like they always like to push those fake ones out there. They would be all over the place showing that yes, Russia is invading right now. But they have no evidence. And this is why they're continually using the lip service. Now, a commander of the Ukrainian neo-Nazi battalions has just returned from the U.S., where he met with the senior senators from both parties and received commitments of material support. One of the main goals of his trip was to get training and much more from the U.S. military. Yesterday, he said, I signed a contract to organize training courses for the fighters and officers of the Battalion of Donbass by mobile groups of instructors from the United States, which held by military that are not currently in service. They will work under the traditional training system used by the Navy SEALs and Delta Force. Standards have been developed for each department, reconnaissance, special forces, security, etc., and for each non-commissioned officer. Particular attention will be paid to the individual training and teamwork. We will use the maximum number of practical exercises. Another important point is the training of sergeants to allow it to act independently and managing a team. So we can see right now the United States is in there. They are training the Ukrainian troops. They are training them to do battle in the winter. We see the paid mercenaries are being now intertwined into the armed forces, so they can say they have no paid mercenaries whatsoever in Ukraine, and we can see they are really building up and getting ready to go fast forward into the southeastern region. Of course, they're going to use some type of false flag event to make the entire world believe that Russia and the southeastern people have attacked them and they are defending themselves and they need to go into this region. A senior UN official warned Wednesday of a return to a full-scale fighting in East Ukraine. We are deeply concerned by the possibility of a return to a full-scale fighting. This is coming from the UN Assistant Secretary General. Now, there are reports coming out from Ukraine and Syria, and this is coming from a human rights watchdog, and they have analyzed the evidence of attacks that involved incendiary weapons, and they're saying that it occurred in 2014 during the ongoing civil war in Syria and in Ukraine. And what we have to look at is that the opposition in Syria is controlled by the United States government central bankers. The Kiev armed forces are also controlled by the United States government and central bankers, and it seems like they're using the same exact weapons, the same exact tactics that they did, and it follows the same playbook, and they'll do anything and everything they can to get what they want. They don't care how many people they hurt. They don't care if they use chemical weapons or depleted uranium. They don't care about any of this. They'll do whatever it takes to reach their goal. Now, Russia is out there, and they are saying that they are going to blacklist the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. They're going to add them to their 20 terrorist organizations, and they will be blacklisted and prohibited inside their country, and they'll be looking for these types of people. Now, in Egypt, it seems like Egypt intends to develop defense and security cooperation with Russia. Egypt will purchase the most modern military equipment from Russia. We believe that Russia is an important state, and this is coming from Egypt. Egypt needs international ties, not only for substituting America with Russia or vice versa, but in order to benefit from the cooperation with everyone. Officials said Cairo and Moscow have reached agreement on a $2.3 billion deal that would provide Egypt with fighter jets, attack helicopters, and air defense batteries. And we can see a lot of these Middle Eastern countries are making deals with China and Russia, moving away from the United States. Now, in Libya, it seems like the rebel groups in Libya have at their disposal about 200 planes, including fighter jets. Among the planes are 170 MiG-21 and MiG-23 fighter jets, 20 Mirage fighter jets, 34 helicopters, and 4 transport planes. For the moment, it is unknown where rebels could have gotten these type of aircraft. The government doesn't understand where all these aircraft came from. And of course, as we know, this was always there. They were probably being hidden from everyone else, and it seems like as these rebel groups have taken over more and more areas inside of Libya, kicked the armed forces out, they're finding many different things inside the country. Now, it seems like a Romanian hacker who accessed private email accounts of numerous top government and military officials, as well as Bush and Rockefeller family. He is out there saying, listen, from all the things I've seen, I'm predicting that there's going to be a nuclear attack on Chicago sometime in 2015. And we have to really think back about what Obama said when he made that statement about a nuclear bomb exploding in Manhattan. Maybe he really didn't mean that. Maybe he was just using that to convince everyone that's where it was going to happen, but it was really going to happen in Chicago. Now, of course, we don't know if this is true or not, but we're going to have to watch this just like every other false flag tip that we get. Now, I'm going to put this on the X22 Report sidebar where we're looking at all the potential false flags, and we have to look at this because we have to understand that the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Khorasan, whatever terrorist group you want to use, will be doing a physical attack here in the United States because they need everyone distracted. They need everyone to understand that another group has attacked the United States, because right now the people of the United States are not for war. The polls are showing that the people really are not motivated to go to war right now. And the only way to get people motivated to go to war is to have the United States attacked. And of course, this will have to come in a huge way to many different areas within the United States. And of course, they will also use some type of cyber attack. And if you really realize and understand what is going on, and you've probably seen it in the news, if you noticed, a lot of these corporations are getting now cyber attack insurance because they realize they will need this from when the attacks come, because they need to, get the money once their system or whatever their banks or whatever company is going to be hit. They need to be insured and protected for what is about to come. Just like in 9/11 when the World Trade Centers came down, the person who owned the World Trade Centers collected the money on those buildings and anything else that was hit. So we can see right now, before it didn't exist, now it does exist, where there is cyber attack insurance, and it looks like a lot of companies are starting to purchase this to protect themselves. And once all the companies have it and they're insured, we can see that they will go ahead and push a cyber attack, bring down the financial institutions, bring down the power grid in certain locations, and of course this will all be blamed on another entity, another country, and all eyes will be off the central bankers and the U.S. government, and all eyes will be shifted in another direction, and the American people will say, hey, they just attacked us, we need to go get them, we want war. And this is exactly what the U.S. government, the central bankers want. They want the people to beg for war. And this is what they've been planning, and this is what they're going to use. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.